Anthony, thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Mate, first of all, thanks for jumping onto the short conversation. I wanted to do this because the full episode we go deep into what you were talking about, and I felt that it deserved a bit of context for people to listen to before they listen to the full episode. So the full episode is called "Stop the Insanity: Breaking the Cycle." Before we even get into the football or anything else, when you hear this title, Stop the Insanity, Breaking the Cycle, what does it mean to you personally?
Anthony, it's basically when I break it down, it's when we're born and when we go through life and we get told or we get shown what to do, we sort of follow leads from father figures or your father and in your life. That's what you expect because that's what you see. The old monkey see, monkey do sort of scenario. Um, but a lot of that's not that healthy, and and I chose a lot of very unhealthy practices when I was young, and it was insane. So that's pretty much what I'm trying to get at. Stopping the behaviour which is detrimental for my well-being and for others as well, and focusing on what's a positive for all.
Mm. Yeah, that word cycle really lands, doesn't it? It's because people don't wake up and choose chaos, it creeps in quietly. So, for people who might know your name from football, they'll see the all whites caps, the international games, the big moments, and but this episode really is all about isn't all sorry, but this episode isn't all about trophies and matches. What really appreciated is how I'm going to start that again. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So for people who might know your name from football, they'll see all the all white caps, the international games, and the big moments. But this episode isn't really about trophies or matches. What I really appreciated is how honest you were about what was going on behind the scenes and why it was important for you to talk about that side of the story.
Yeah, well, I think I've always been a liar, to be fair, and I cheated, I lied, and I wasn't really the person that when I looked in the mirror that I wanted to be. And I went from being after having a lot of poor health and having some quite astronomical changes in my life. My realization basically got to the stage where I thought, well, it's not about what I can do for Michael Latting, it's what I can do for others. And that's what gives me credibility. It's what drives me now. And that's what makes me feel, sort of, if I'm serving other people now, it makes me feel complete.
Yeah, it's such an important point. And from the outside, people assume success equals happiness. And that assumption just keeps a lot of people silent. So,
Yeah, I
one,
think I played football. I used to go on the field, Anthony, and I succeeded pretty much because out of a fear of failure. So I didn't really enjoy the games as much as I should have, as much as I could have. And that was looking back now, it was not a good place to be. And that was something which stemmed from, as I said, when I was brought up, following people that weren't the healthiest of role models and following in their footsteps, which wasn't good. And something in my head was saying, no, that's not the way you really want to behave. But that was the norm back in those days.
mm,
It wasn't
mm,
until, very recently, I'm in my mid 50s now, but, it's never too late to change and people can change.
mm.
It's now lovely that I can wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and say to myself, am I the person that my daughter would like to walk down the street and call her father? And
Mm.
my father. And I think I am now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I appreciate you sharing that. One thing that really stood out for me was how performance can become a hiding place. You're expected to perform, you're rewarded for your results, but no one really asks about how you're coping. How did the pressure and the identity play out into the cycle you found yourself in?
Well, one thing I felt that I used to think it was all me. I used to play the victim card a lot, and say, "Oh, poor me, poor me." And then I realized, well, the only person that's going to help you get out of this and to achieve and be happy with life is you. But very recently, and with the big transitional changes in my life, I actually understand that there are a lot of people that have helped me on the way, and probably the first and foremost is my mum. Just the simple things of putting food on the table, putting a roof over my head, giving me a hug and a kiss when I needed it, and a smack on the bum when I needed it as well. And also, yeah, just being there for me was something that I took for granted, but it's a huge part in, someone's development. Not having a father, always looking for a father figure, and not finding healthy ones. Mum was something that was really huge in my development.
Mm. Yeah, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like that shows up, beyond just sport. It's in the business life, your leadership, your family, everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But I think, at times you take it for granted, and now I'm at the stage where I'm actually appreciating things like that and friends that have helped as well along the way. And it's important to acknowledge that.
yeah. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the turning point. So, without giving away too much of the episode, there were moments in your life where things could have gone really, really differently. So, for someone listening right now who feels like they are heading towards the wall, what would you say was the real wake up call for you?
Well, I think at times I had some huge wake up calls. One was when I broke my neck in South Africa in a car crash and was told I'd never walk again. Walked 8 weeks later, and you sort of have it's a bit of a personal challenge that when I've had challenges in my life, I've often risen to the occasion, so to speak. So that was a huge one, and ended up playing football at a higher level than I'd ever played before. I was more focused, more driven because I had the blessing of playing football at a high level because it is a blessing, and it's a talent you're given. And it doesn't matter how hard you train. If you've got the ability, that's 90% of it. The other 10% is how hard you put in the hard work. But you've
Yeah,
got that ability first and foremost. So,
yeah.
so that was huge. But then again, I got that wake up call, and I didn't heed it at the time, and fell back into my ways, bad ways with drinking and what have you, and not being a good role model. I think another thing, probably the biggest thing was when I working with special needs kids was wonderful. I enjoy that, and I still do today. But I had a heart attack
Mm,
when I was not looking after myself physically and mentally, smoking marijuana, still drinking alcohol, in the evenings and that, and these and eating crap, and these are not good things. If you want to have a good, healthy life and be a role model and inspire other people, you can talk the talk, but you've got to walk the walk. And you can lie to other people, but you can't lie to yourself, can you? And that's what that's what I'd been doing.
mm,
So I changed, and that was a huge part in my life. And now with my sobriety, which is over 500 days, alcohol free and no marijuana or no drugs, I'm in a really good place. And it's taken, well, it's longevity, isn't it? It takes a long time to get here, but nothing in value is done overnight, is it?
no, no, nothing. Exactly. And what I really respect is that you don't frame change as a single moment. It was a decision that then then another decision, and so on. And that's so important, such an important message for people who think that they have to fix everything overnight. And reality is that it's constant, right? Change is a constant thing, and it takes moment by moment by moment. And like what I've found in my life is that each day you're shifting identities, each moment you're shifting identities, each moment you're shifting into a different version of yourself. And as long as you're consciously doing that in the best way, then you're going change is going to support you on that journey. Um,
100%, Anthony. And I
yeah,
think you've hit it on the head. You hit the nail on the head there. I think another thing that's important to bring to the table is that we're human, and we do have faults and we make mistakes. And although I used to be very hard on myself, and if people ask me, if they say to me, "Look, you've really achieved a lot for a little kid coming from Naio in Wellington to playing on the biggest stadiums in the world, against the Brazilians and the French and the best football players that have ever walked on the planet," sort of thing, I would have said at a younger age, not a chance. But I've achieved that, and I think life is. It's amazing if you put the effort in. I still think I did underachieve, but I've been pretty happy with what I have achieved, and
yeah,
the I've met along the way as well, which has been
yeah.
very, very good.
Well, you and I, we went to the same school. We were probably there at the same time. We didn't really cross paths, but it's interesting how we know the same people at school. We
Yep,
were both underachievers, but we've what we've done is we've actually, uh, not like I don't believe in the whole school system anyway. And
I agree with you. I agree with you. I think it's
yeah,
very
because it's
yeah,
limiting. It's like you're there to, they teach you that failure is actually a bad thing,
yeah.
when actually failure is actually something that you can learn from. And I remember years ago, a manager when I was being a sales rep, and he said to me, "Anthony, do you know what mistakes are?" I said, "Mistakes are really bad. Like it's it means you've done a bad thing." He said, "No." He says, when you make a movie, you have a lot of mistakes." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, eventually you get the right take and you make a multi-million-dollar movie." So if you think of that analogy, is that
Mhm.
is that you're going to fall over, you're going to make mistakes, but what I would encourage you is that if you're watching this, is that fail and make mistakes as much as you can, because you're going to learn quickly, and you're going to then you know uh, you're not going to hopefully make those same mistakes again if it has adverse effect on it. So remember, there is consequences to inaction as well as action as well. I would and make sure that you're taking action every day towards who you want to become.
100%. I agree with you. I've always been on the opinion that you learn from your mistakes a lot more than you do from your successes, don't you?
Yeah,
And
100%.
with
Yeah.
people are patting you on the back, it's like I remember a coach years ago telling me that, mate, I'm not going to give you a pat on the back and tell you all this and all that, because you've got a girlfriend, you've got a wife who's going to do that, regardless of how you perform. I'm going to be honest with you, mate, and I'm going to be critical of you to the maximum. I'm going to critique your performances, and I want you to do better. So the only way you're going to do better is if I challenge you, and and we look at the negatives rather than the positives. It's always nice to get positives, but the negatives definitely spur you on to achieving. And as I said about the sort of a fight or flight sort of scenario I had every day in my life, I've sort of lived in that belief, I suppose.
Mm, mm. Now, life now and your current perspective. Fast forward today, life looks very different now. How do you define success now compared to your playing days?
I think I can define it by what I do on the big scale rather than the small scale. Small scale being myself, what I do for myself. That's behind me now, and and it's what I can do for other people. I think reflects better on me. I think if we all had a perspective of being a good person and helping others, the world would be a much better place than what it is currently, because
Mm,
it's actually changed a lot since we were at Rongotai, when we didn't really have a care in the world, did we? But everything was sort of family orientated, wasn't it? And now it's more about the individual succeeding, We can look at that, and I suppose we look at the world leaders, and not naming any names, but we look at world leaders who instead of getting behind other world leaders and being encouraging and being a positive influence in their life, they think about what's in it for them. And that's, I know a lot of people in politics, and I'm not, mate, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I'm not stupid, and I understand there's a lot of fault in governments these days where, unfortunately, I think a lot of the people have got their own agendas rather than what's best for them is not you know possibly what's best for the whole country,
Yeah.
and it's a
Yeah.
shame.
Yeah. Yeah, as you said before, it's all about the individual success, and we've been taught to compete against each other from a very young age,
Mm.
and that competition really doesn't get you anywhere. It divides you, and if you take a game of football or rugby, if every individual started to play for themselves, imagine what that game. You probably wouldn't win at all. But when you get together as a team and you collaborate and you work together as a team, as one unit,
Yeah.
with the same shared vision, then you can achieve so much together. And there's a saying that if you want to go faster, go by yourself. But if you want to go further, then go with others. And
Yes.
especially people, it's about who you're the sum of the people that you hang around with. So if you hang around with people who are not going to serve you or not going to give you good a good influence, then guess what? You're going to become like them. So
Yeah.
make sure that if you're listening to this, make sure that you're surrounded by great people who are going to support you and lift you up and build you up, right? Because
Yeah.
a great leader is someone who does not go ahead of their people. A great leader is someone who sends their people ahead of him or
Yeah.
herself. And so it's so powerful. Then it's like it's if you think about it, it's peace over performance and presence over pressure. I think a lot of people are craving that exactly. And even if they don't have the language yet for it, a lot of people just want that connection, human connection. And especially in this day of AI and so on, where, you know, people want the connection and be able to relate to each other.
Yeah, Anthony, I think I've been very fortunate that I've played in a number of countries around the world, and Africa probably been the highlight for me. Not so much from a playing point of view, but a lifestyle. I mean, I met amazing people, and when I was off season, we normally used to have a month or 2 months off in the off season, and I used to go and spend that time checking out Africa, traveling around Africa, going to places like Nigeria and Swaziland and just beautiful places and beautiful people, and they had nothing, but they're still friends today because they had love and they were just so happy with what they have. I think today there's too much. I suppose companies look at profit over people. And the bottom line is the dollar they're making. You see CEOs these days that and I saw something the other night on TV where CEO was getting paid a bonus of $46 million for the year. This is in the States, but he had 90% of his workforce, which was in the thousands, couldn't afford to pay for their medical bills and send the kids to school with lunches every day of the week. And I was sort of thinking, you know, maybe that 46 million might be lessened and giving it a bit to the people that help you a bit along the way. And yeah, does that make sense? So it's a shame, isn't it, today that people can be so self-focused, and it's not
Yeah,
getting ahead. That's great, but you don't have to knock people down on the way there.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Now, if someone's listening to this video and they're thinking, "This sounds familiar," what would you say to them to encourage them to listen to the full episode?
I think it stresses my journey, which could be very similar to a lot of people, uh, and change is possible. Change. People can change. I'm an addict. I'm an alcoholic, so I can't drink ever again. And although I do, count the days, that's not the be all and end all. I gave up on the 30th of September 2024. So it's been a while now. But my message for people out there is to reevaluate. No matter what you've done in your life, it's important to reevaluate what's important for all. And although I was on a very, self-centered journey at first, it wasn't until I started putting others before myself that I realised that's what true value and success is.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And this episode isn't just about football. It's about the patterns. It's about honesty, and it's about choosing to stop repeating the same story. So if you're listening to this right now and something in this conversation has resonated with you, make sure that you tune into the full episode on the Champion Mindset Collective podcast with Michael Utting. Listen and share it. And if it helps one person break that cycle, then this conversation has done its job.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Thank you very much.
All right. Now we will kick into the
Cool.
full episode. Just give me a second. So, what happens when success on the outside is hiding chaos on the inside? Today's conversation is about stopping the insanity, breaking old cycles, and choosing a different path forward. Today's guest is Michael Utting, a former All Whites goalkeeper who represented New Zealand on the international stage and competed in FIFA Confederations Cup. Born and raised in Wellington, Michael built a long football career across New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, playing for clubs including the Miramar Rangers, South Melbourne Supersport United, and Football Kings. And between 1993 and 2003, he earned 14 caps for the All Whites and played all three matches in the 2003 Confederation Cup in France. Behind the scenes, Michael's journey included a very real struggles around alcoholism, public setbacks, and also serious health scares that forced him to confront his life head on. Today, he speaks openly about recovery, resilience, and what it truly takes to stop repeating destructive patterns. In this powerful and honest conversation about breaking cycles, taking responsibility, and rebuilding from the inside out. Welcome, Michael, to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast.
Anthony, that's a lovely intro. I don't know whether I can live up to that, but I appreciate it, and it's nice to be here. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Now, Michael, we're going to go through a number of questions. So I'd love for you to share briefly a little bit about your childhood and to now.
Yep.
And as we go through these questions, it'd be great to have some sort of brief summaries of what you went through. So, yeah, first of all, share with us what was your journey like from childhood to now.
Had a wonderful, wonderful childhood. I was born and raised in Wellington, the windy capital of New Zealand. A great environment for sports people, because it's we sort of get 4 seasons in one day over in Wellington, and it can be raining in the morning and then sunny in the afternoon, and blowing a gale and then still as well in the afternoon. And so we had the best of everything back in the day. I remember we used to go for weeks and weeks without being able to play football on the weekends, soccer on the weekends, because the grounds would be closed for weeks and weeks on end because of all the rain. And luckily enough, today we've got the artificial pitches which people can play on. So you've got sort of access 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 12 months of the year. So we're very fortunate. I grew up in Wellington, as I said, and I went to Nio School. Had a wonderful time at Nio School and played soccer for Onslow Football Club. And big shout out to Onslow. Small club up in Kandala. but wonderful people, just a very family orientated setup there. I remember I came from a family that my mum and dad separated when I was 10 years old. So, mum had 4 kids to raise. And, before that, we didn't have a lot of money. And I suppose we were quite poor, but we didn't go without. But I remember each year we used to go to the boot sale when they used to have at the club. And, the rich kids who were getting new boots used to chuck away the old boots into the club. And mum would go and buy me a pair of boots, which were, maybe a year or 2 seasons old. And for $5. And I thought I was absolute king, So I started at Nio, really enjoyed it. They went to Rara Intermediate, and then I went to Rongotai College, had a wonderful time there, played volleyball, cricket, soccer with a lot of the people that and that's really all I did. I definitely wasn't an academic. And at Rongotai, I was very lucky because it's a really amazing breeding ground for sports people in New Zealand. And you look at the likes of one of my mates, and I'm a Junior Tonu, or Fesa Tanunu, as he's known in the rugby circles. He was a friend of mine at school. We sat next to each other in Mr. Bowden's class, and we used to bunk off school and go down to Lyell Bay and get a pie each some days and a can of Coke and sit and watch the surfers. And I remember talking to Junior and saying, "What are we going to do with life? I don't know." And he doesn't know, but I ended up playing for the All Whites, New Zealand national team, and Junior went on and played for the All Blacks, which is obviously the New Zealand #1 sport, rugby. And it's amazing that you can start from quite humble beginnings and get to where we've got to, I suppose.
Mm, mm. So when you look back at this, what did this cycle look like when you were for you when you were in your playing days? At what point did you realize the same patterns repeating?
Well, I think what happened first and foremost was I always, as most of us in our young days do, we look at role models in our life. And a lot of people, uh, you know, we accept what is the now and the norm as what we will follow. And whether that's good or bad, that's the norm. So that's what we do. And I remember, I've been a cheat, a liar, I'm an alcoholic. And although I thought I had a good heart and I'd do anything for someone or anyone in need, I wasn't being good to myself, and that, and first and foremost, is what you've got to do in life to get respect from other people and self-respect as well. And what I found was I was I was siding with people that were drinkers and pot smokers and cheaters. But look, and my week was surrounded about playing football on the weekend, but then going and partying, and whereas now, if I could go back again, and people ask me, would you change your past? And in the past, I've always said no. The past is the past, and that's it. Take ownership and move on. But mate, I would change so many things if I had the opportunity to again. But now, when I think back, the things that I think were were good and respectable back in the day, I used to think they were like boring and flat. Being a good person, being a good partner, being a good father figure, and being a role model for kids. These are important things. We live in a world where we're all part of it. I think everything's related, and if you do a bad thing here, something bad will happen over there. And the old karma scenario, I suppose. And so I think it's important to do good. And if we all did that, unfortunately, we live in in a world where so many people are self-obsessed, and they walk all over others to get their goals and get ahead. Uh, but it's at the detriment of others, and
Mm,
it's a sad state of affairs.
yeah, yeah, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. How easy is it in the elite sport to normalize that unhealthy behavior?
Well, I think you get put on a pedestal with sport.
Mm,
A lot of people I know, being first and foremost a football fan, I'd go and watch games in the weekend, and watch it on TV, and we all sort of do that. But when you become a player, it's important to differentiate between the fan sort of setup and the player setup. The players, the fans go to work on a Monday to Friday, and then they go and enjoy themselves on the weekend. Let their hair down and watch a game, maybe have a beer and a pie and that sort of stuff. The players, first and foremost, are meant to be playing well on the weekend, but it's important for them to also do the right things off the field as well.
Mm,
And I didn't have that scenario. I didn't have that sort of that drive. As I said earlier, I made a lot of mistakes because the people that were role models in my life, they weren't living the healthiest of lifestyles, and they weren't professional sportsmen. So I thought I could get away with not being that professional, and I suppose I had a lot of talent, which I was blessed with, but I would have been a lot better if I'd been a bit more focused on the other ways, on the other things as well.
mm, mm. Yeah. By the way, we are live on a number of platforms. I'm using Riverside for the first time, and I didn't realize that we're actually live
Cool.
on a number of platforms. So just thought I'd give you the heads up. So say hi to everyone, and
Hello, hello, hello from Auckland, New Zealand. It's a lovely day, and I'm a bit sore to be honest with you because I've just recently joined the gym again. I have a personal trainer, and he's got me working a bit harder than I'd normally do, Anthony, and the body's like sore.
yeah,
But it's a good sore. So
yeah. Michael, let's talk about success, pressure, and escape. So from the outside, you were living the dream. Inside, it was a different story. How did pressure and expectation fuel the escape behaviors?
yeah, I think I was very fortunate because for me, the the higher the level I played, I actually, without sounding arrogant, but probably will sound arrogant, but I actually felt the higher the level, the easier it became for me because it meant that I was more switched on, and when I played maybe at a lower level, I would switch off at times. So yeah, sorry, just repeat that question again because I'm sort of a bit.
Yeah, sure. How did the pressures and expectation fuel your escape behaviors? So it's escaping into alcoholism and drug, or not drugs, but
Yep,
like
yep,
all the addictions that you had. So
yep.
how did that shape that?
Well, I think when you're playing at a professional level, and it's all or nothing, and I would play hard, and I'd also party hard. I
Mm,
didn't have my priorities sorted out the way they should be. Instead of going home after a game and having a cup of Milo or something, and watching a bit of TV and maybe watching the game on TV as a replay, I'd go out and get on the beers and smoke a cigarette. How disgusting is that for a sportsman? So, yeah, I got caught up in the razzle dazzle, I suppose you could call it, and as a lot of people do. And I think I put that down to not having good role models in my life. As I said before, I follow people that were more sort of on the supportive bandwagon rather the fan base rather than the supportive base, and
mm,
yeah, so I made a lot of fault because of that. And I think also sports people, you'll hear a lot of stories about sportsmen and sportswomen that go off the rails, and it's just part of the culture, unfortunately, which we were brought up with.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Do you think that sport sometimes rewards performance while ignoring well-being?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I got kicked out of the All Whites a couple of times, for misbehaving. And although Football NZ or Soccer New Zealand said at the time they were there to help me, they didn't help me at all. And
Mm,
the only reason I got back in the All Whites and back playing professional football was because I worked at it and I did it, myself. And I had help from people, trainers and what have you. But yeah, it's pretty harsh, isn't it?
yeah. Now, before we go on to some other questions, I'd love for you to share some of the stuff that you shared with me previously around that football and short, like the football career, the the accident that you had, the heart attack. Share a bit about that in summary for us, please.
Well, I went to South Africa in my early 20s. I'd actually
Hmm.
been playing soccer in Australia. I'd been given a call by I received a call from Ian Marshall, who at the time was the New Zealand coach, lovely English or Scottish lad. And he asked me if I'd like to go and play state football over in Australia. There's a club that contacted him, and they needed a keeper, and they were coming up to the business end of the season, I suppose you could call it. So, yep, I went over and played for Sunshine George Cross, which is uh, it's a Maltese supporters club, Maltese. And what I found about the difference between New Zealand and Australia, New Zealanders are all in the mix together. We're very, we've got all religions and all nationalities all playing on the same level playing field. In Australia, it's a lot different. You had all the ethnic communities, and you had your Greeks, your Italians, all of that, and the clubs were supported by fans of that denomination, and it was, the rivalry was huge. So if there were countries that had been to war against each other in the past, we went to war on the pitch, and I loved that. I loved that. It was just so passionate. And after playing in Australia, I actually went from state league to the national league with Melbourne Victory, or South Melbourne Hellas, a Greek club, and I loved my time there. But at the end of the season, they owed me some money, and they were only going to sign me if they would only pay me the money that they owed me, and it was about $40,000, which for a 20-year-old was a lot of money. Um, but they said to me, well, if you sign another contract with us for another year or two, we'll give you the money that's outstanding. And I basically, gave him the finger and said, no, I'm not happy with that. And I flew over to visit my father in South Africa, not knowing what I was going to do, because in those days, we used to have a ruling: when you signed for a club and you were registered with that team, even when your contract finished and you weren't getting paid anymore, you were still tied up with the club because you were registered with them. So they could ask for a transfer fee if they saw fit to do that. So I went to South Africa, visited my dad, and after a couple of days here, flew from his place in Durban up to Johannesburg and went to Pretoria from there, which is about an hour's drive. As a club up there asked me to come and trial with them because they were a newly owned club, Pretoria City, where they'd just been brought out by Supersport United. Supersport, and they were named Supersport United the next season. Supersport is like Sky Television in New Zealand, and they're huge, a lot of money, and it's massive. So they're showing all our games live on TV and all over Africa, and I worked, as I said, I flew up to Pretoria, or to Joburg, went to Pretoria, stayed in a hotel for about 3 months, and they told me they wanted to sign me after 6 days, and I just loved it. The weather was great, the beer was cold, and the women were just stunning. The African women were just beautiful, and I fell in love with the place, and the people there just lovely, lovely people. And being a Kiwi, I love my haka. I've got my silver fern tattoo on the chest. I I've lost count of how many hakas I've performed in my days over there for beer or just to entertain the masses, as we say. But I just had such a wonderful time there, and being able to play a professional game and get paid quite handsomely for it. It really gave me the opportunity to enjoy life as well as play at a high level, which I wouldn't have had if I'd played in Europe. I think if I'd played in Europe, I think I was probably good enough to. I underachieved as a player, but thinking back now, and I've been quite detailed with the way I've spoken to people about this in the past, Anthony. I actually realised that if I had not been going through all the stuff I've gone through and ended up in South Africa, I wouldn't have had the time to get around Africa and enjoy it. And I've still got friends today that, 30 years after I was finished playing football there, sort of thing, that I'm still in touch with. So in England, or in Europe, it would always be cold and wet, and you'd be going to training and going home and having a feed and maybe a little snooze, and then dinner, and then that's it. But in Africa, when training finished, we were out and about. Unfortunately, I broke my neck in a car crash. One night, I was asked to go out to a friend's bar. He owned well, he didn't own it, but he ran it was called Mexican Fiesta, and it was a Mexican styled restaurant and bar. I told them it was a Thursday night. I told them I couldn't go because we had a game. We were playing Kaiser Chiefs, and they were the big team in Africa, and they're massive. And we were playing them on the weekend. I ended up watching them in my hotel bed. But I got asked by my mates if I'd come down to the bar and have a few drinks with them. And I said, no, big game this weekend, so I've got to be best behaviour. 20 minutes after getting off the phone, there's a knock on my door, and four of my mates from the bar have come to pick me up. So they picked me up, I back down to the bar, started drinking tequilas and getting absolutely blind drunk, as I did in those days, with little regard for what was coming up the next morning, so I had to go to training. Anyway, that night after drinking till about 1 o'clock in the morning, a friend of mine said, "Why don't we go to the Sun City?" And so it's an hour drive from Pretoria, and to go and play at the casino. And I had cash at home, so I said, "Okay, well, let's do that. We'll drive back up to my house." He had his car, he drove, and we drove back to my place. We actually drove into my garage door. So if that wasn't a sign not to proceed any further, I don't know what would have stopped me. So we drove into the garage door, made a mockery of that, and went upstairs, got some cash, jumped in the car, and we drove to Sun City. But uh, I woke up the next day or 2 days later in a hospital. We had taken a bend and drove over a cliff and rolled the car. Luckily, it was just near a 7-Eleven or dairy come petrol station. Because if it was in the middle of nowhere, no one would have seen us and we would have died, because we rolled down a bank. I think the car rolled 5 times by all accounts, and there were witnesses there in the service station that saw us. They heard the car first, and then the bang as we sort of went over the cliff and hit rocks, and I was thrown out of the car. My mate, he had concussion from hitting his head against the windscreen, and he had he had bruised thighs from the steering wheel. And luckily, I cracked my skull and ended up getting 47 stitches in my head. But if I hadn't have cracked my skull, the bang and the swelling on my brain would have probably made me brain dead. So I'd like to think I didn't have any mental issues after that. But I ended up in a hospital, got told I'd never walk again, or most probably never walk again, and had a lot of operations. They took some bone out of my hip. I have now a fusion of the fifth and sixth vertebrae in my neck, and so I've got a plate and 4 screws. I've lost 80% of the hearing in my left ear. Lucky to be here. I saw being told not to walk again. I saw that as a bit of a challenge. I knew I'd walk, and I walked out of hospital eight weeks later. So that was my first big sort of wake-up call, which I didn't really take. Well, I didn't take at all. I ended up, after that, getting back on the drink and smoked a lot of pot, as you do in Africa. And I'm not saying all Africans do that, but I did. And just, sort of living a very unhealthy life. I ended up one day meeting a mate, or meeting a guy who used to come and watch me play football, and he said, "Oh gosh, I remember when you were young and slim and a few years ago and playing football at the highest level. How old are you now?" And I said, "Well, I'm 28 now." And he goes, "Well, you've been here for a few years. Why don't you play football again?" I said, "Well, I've got a plate to my neck, I can't." And he goes, "Well, I'll tell you what, why don't you work as my trainer and we'll get fit together." He was a big lad. He was about 6'4" and 140 kilos. And I wasn't far off him, but I wasn't as tall as him. But so we joined the gym the next day, and we started gymming every day. And I worked for him as the driver. He had shops all over Gauteng and down in Bloemfontein, and they were coin shops. And we used to go around cashing up and just having a really good time together. And I moved into a house that he shared with his partner. She was from Swaziland, and her best mate, her name was Togo, best mate Nazuku, and their son Wandili. Still friends with them all today. And my mate's name was Kevin. So we had a lot of fun, and then we got fit. And I got so fit, I'd never been as fit as I was then in my life. And because we used to go and watch games, National League games and First Division games. And I remember when and he used to ask me, and other people used to say, look, I remember seeing you play and that. And I'd never had such a passion for the game, Anthony, as what I had then,
Mm.
because I didn't appreciate it when I had it. I just took it for granted. Now I'm not playing. I thought, gosh, I wish I could do this again.
Mhm.
And then after getting really fit, after 18 months of exercise and getting, super fit, and I bought a soccer ball once and took it down to a park, and the black people that were walking around the park, and that they said, can we play? And we ended up playing like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday every day of the week. And it got to the stage where there'd be like 50 or 60 people in this game, and it was lovely. It was fun, and it was just coloured people and black people, and no whites would venture into that sort of environment. So, but people knew me there because I was, ex-professional player, and they'd see me play, and it was my soccer ball as well.
Mm.
So that got my love back for the game. And then I went and trained with the second division club, and they wanted to sign me. Uh, so I went and saw my neurosurgeon, and she said, well, I can't believe it. You're looking amazing. You've really done the hard work. You can, I didn't have anything else either, Anthony, by the way. So that was all or nothing. She said, as long as you sign a form which stipulates that I have no comeback, to her if I do injure myself, she's happy to sign it off and let me go and play again. So I got clearance from her, medical clearance from her, and then I went back and trained with the second division club. I I got a call. No, I actually went to the second division club, and I was going to play for them. And I said to them, I'll play for you on the condition that I get paid a minimal weekly wage. But if a first division club comes in to buy me, then I can go on a free. They didn't sign me for anything, so I expected to leave for nothing. They said, fine. Anyway, so because I'd been stung before in Australia, I asked, and my mate Kevin he worked as my manager, and he said to them, said, look, before Michael plays the first game, we want that clearance written up and given to us so we've got evidence to say that we can leave, because, clubs will stitch you up, and they actually did that. And so I went to the first game, and I was going to be captain, and the coach had a big team talk, and announced that, I was the captain for the season and all this, and we got all this new Adidas gear, and I thought it was heaven. And then Kevin came into the changing room and said, oh, Johnny Ferreira was our coach, and a Portuguese lad. And he said, Johnny, can I have a word? And he goes, yeah, sure. Kevin goes outside of him and goes, oh, have you got that clearance for Michael? And he goes, oh, no, I left it at home. He'd never made a clearance up for me, mate. He was going to stitch us if he could. And Kevin came back in and said, oi, Kiwi, we're out of here. So he took me away, and I thought I hadn't worked for 2 years, had no income, and other than the money he was giving me for working for him, and so I walked out of the place, and we went to the car, and the coach came running after us saying, you're letting down everyone. And Kevin said to him, he said, look, Mike's got self pride now, and it's something he didn't have for a long, long time, and if you had stuck to the agreement, he'd be playing for you quite happily, but you haven't. So we left, and I was sort of thinking, I learned a valuable lesson that day, Anthony, that, self-value is extremely important in life, not just in sport, but, for a lot of the time in the past, I'd never had that, now I did. And so anyway, a couple of days after that, I went and started training with my ex-professional first division team, Supersport United. A couple of weeks later, I was super fit, fittest I've ever been. A couple of weeks later, they were playing a game on TV when I was watching it, and their goalkeeper got sent off. The reserve keeper came on, got injured, so a player had to go in goal for the last 5 to 10 minutes. I went to training that was on a Saturday night. I went to training on the Monday morning, and they had a couple of other keepers here. So we've got one guy who's injured. First team keepers been suspended for 3 games, and they really didn't want to play the other youngsters. So they signed me on a week-to-week contract. And the money was nothing, I think it was $1,000 a week, which was still a lot for me, but poor, poor penance for those sort of players. So I signed up, and I was ended up playing the next weekend against Amazulu, which is from Durban. They're from Durban, and big club supported by the Zulus. And remember the movie Shaka Zulu and that, so they're
Hmm.
pretty ferocious off the field and in the stands. And I loved it. I loved the passionate fans and the way they used to. They were. One thing I liked about the African supporters is they were full of love for the game, which
Mm.
Yanks can be, and the Europeans can be quite spiteful and full of hate. In Africa, everyone just loves the game, and I'm not saying they're all drunk and stoned, but a lot of the people were, and they just the football was a huge part of it. Was a religion over there.
Mm.
And so played against Amazulu, we won 2-0. I got man of the match, and the club had been sitting in, I think they were in a 20-team league. I think we was 19th in the league, so we weren't doing well at all. And for a big club like that, Supersport, with all the money and financial backing, it would have been really awful for them to get relegated and having to go to the second division, especially when they've invested so much money on players and staff and new ground they'd built and all that. So the first team coach said, "Well, look, you've got 2 more games, and then I'll keep us back." So I played the next week. We won 1-0. I did very well again, and then the week after that we won 3-1, I think. So we'd won 3 games in a row. We're on a roll now, and I'm just getting a week in, week in. I had to sign another, registration form, not the registration, but just another letter of intent the next week. Each Monday morning I'd come in before training, I'd sign a letter to say, yeah, I'm back here for another week. And when I signed there, it was at the halfway stage, we were at Christmas. I ended up, we went on a run of 7 games. We only conceded like 2 or 3 goals, and we won all of them. And from then on, I played every game for the rest of the season, and we ended up coming fifth, I think, fifth or seventh or something. So
Nice.
I did very well. We got to the grand final, which is called the Bob Save Super Bowl, and that was played at Soccer City in front of a huge crowd. And we were playing Kaiser Chiefs, so the old foe again, the number 1 team, and I got man of the match in that game as well, and we won 2-1. And from there, our national team coach, Ken Dugdale at the time, he came and watched me play a few games, and he spent a week or 10 days over there. I think I played 3 games and did very well. And he said, "Would you like to be part of the All Whites again?" And I said, "Well, of course I would. And so I ended up going to the Confederations Cup in Mexico in 1999. And we had a huge tour. We went all over the place. I think we were away for something like 9 weeks. And and as the national team. And you wouldn't be able to do that in professional football now. It just wouldn't happen. You wouldn't be able to get away from the clubs for so long. But it was huge. And they're all good guys, all Kiwi boys, obviously. And we had a great time and saw a bit of the world on the way. And then we ended up playing. We had 3 goalkeepers in our squad. Ross Nicholson was one of the other keepers. He was my roommate. Great guy. And got on really well. And we ended up playing a first game against the USA, who are top 10 in the world. Beautiful hot day in Guadalajara. It was mid-30s, and we lost 2-1, but I had a great game, and I had a very good game. And then afterwards, we went out and got on the Terps, and I sort of broke curfew again. So I got dropped for the next game, which was 2 days later against the USA. Against Germany. So I was devastated. And after the first game against USA, the next day, and the papers were out, and they're all in Spanish, and they had the team of the round. So you've got teams like Brazil, Yugoslavia, a couple of European teams. Germany was there, and USA. I think Japan were there, and they have a team of the round. And the team of the round was me in goal, and all these amazing superstars from Brazil and France and all that. And I'm thinking, shit, that's nice company to keep, isn't it? So I kept
Mm.
paper cut out for the. I couldn't read it, but I got someone to translate for me. And it was just, like dreams come true sort of thing. And anyway, so we we lost to Germany 2-0. I didn't play that game, and then a few days later we were about to the night before we played Brazil on the Friday. Excuse me, under lights. Uh, Coach called us in for a team meeting to name the team, and I thought I was done and dusted, mate. I thought there's no way he's going to bring me back in the squad again and to play. And I found out afterwards that the captain of the team, Chris Orzic, and a number of the players, the senior players, had gone to Ken and said, "You've got to play Utz or you've got to play Michael," and because we're playing Brazil, who are number one ranked in the world. In South America, we're playing them over there, so it's there. All the crowd's going to be paying for our blood and supporting them, and 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 I sort of was on a bit of sort of a fairy tale ride anyway. So Ken picked the team, and I was back in the team, and I remember before the game in the changing room underneath the ground, the curtain raiser for our game was Germany and USA. So huge, and Brazil were number one in the world. We're 101st ranked in the world. We went and played them, and I'd said to the guys before the game, because the coach asked if anyone wanted to say anything, and I remember saying, "We're going to win if we go and score a goal, because I'm not going to let one in." And I was that. I think I was confident because I'd had so much crap in my life, and I was at a stage
Mm.
worked harder than anyone to get to where I am today. I cried when the national anthem was played, and we ended up losing 2-0. The superstar Ronaldinho scored a goal against me, a free kick, and at the time I think I shouted at him, unpleasant word. No, I didn't, but I wasn't happy. But he went on to become the best player in the world, so it wasn't such a bad loss. But had a good game, and then went back to South Africa, still drinking and still doing stupid stuff, and sort of taking my gift, which was my talent to play football, as well as other things in my life I was good at. But that was the one that people knew me by. Took it for granted, and I didn't really appreciate it.
Mm.
And then went to South Africa and played again, and then I came back to New Zealand, played for the first professional football team, which is the Football Kings, based in Auckland, and Chris Turner owned that team and ran them, and a gentleman by the name of Ted Midlane, who was the other owner there, and that was wonderful to be part of that. We had the Oceania Player of the Century, Winton Rufer, who's the next Rongatai boy like the two
Mhm.
of us, and
Yeah.
he was our coach, ex-Werder Bremen player. He played in Germany, and this just a superstar, and I knew Winton because of the All Whites, and but when I was young, I used to go and play at Miramar Park, and I remember one day he walked past the goal at Miramar Park, and I looked around in awe. Luckily, I nearly let through a goal because I wasn't watching the game; I was watching him. And missed a shot. So, but he coached the team, and Shane was his brother. He was the assistant coach, and I played in the first professional New Zealand football team that played in the Australian League, and very honoured and very
Mm.
proud. And it's funny though, since a lot of people have said to me how proud they were of my achievements,
Mm.
but no one said anything at the time because
Yeah.
I think it's a New Zealand mentality, as we don't really praise people that done well. We love to knock people. We call it the tall poppy syndrome, don't we? Where we
Yeah.
love to knock people, but we don't really, celebrate our wins as much as and it's a shame. But anyway, so I ended up having a wonderful career in football.
Yeah.
Back to South Africa again, and then I came back and represented New Zealand in the 2003 Confederations Cup finals. They were held in France, so I got to see some of France. We stayed in Lyon, the club, the national team, and we were there for ages. And just France, what a beautiful place. And we played Japan. We lost 3-0. We also lost 3-1 to Colombia, which was which was my probably the best game I've ever played for New Zealand. And then the last game we were playing France in Paris, um, and the French team was at the time they were the best team in the world, and
Mm.
they had just amazing players, and
Yeah.
Thierry Henry from Arsenal and guys like that. We ended up getting smashed 5-0. So that was the last international I played for New Zealand,
Mm.
But
Yeah.
we had a lot of unrest after the game because we had a lot of discrepancy over how much of the bonus money that we'd received for qualifying, um, how much the players were going to get divvied out, and and basically they asked a few players like myself and a couple of other guys what we thought was fair, and was that whether you played in the games to get us to the tournament or the games during the tournament. I played in all the games at the tournament, and I said, well, to be honest with you, whatever you give me is going to be spent at some stage.
Yeah.
Memories
Yeah.
that I'll get from playing at this level against the best team in the world and the
Yeah.
best teams in the world and being part of this tournament, I'll hold forever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that came back to New Zealand.
Yeah.
Um, played for the Kings again, and then I ended up getting into real estate when I stopped playing football. I still played just socially out here in Wellington and then Auckland. Moved to Auckland, as I said, but then I fell in love, got married, and we migrated back down to Wellington. Had a daughter. Marriage didn't last, unfortunately. It was, my doing. I'll take responsibility for that. I was not the best husband, and uh, I left a very young daughter, and it was the hardest thing I could have done, and I've ever done, and even to this day, I still regret that. But I got into, I left real estate and got into, after 10 years, and got into working with special needs kids. And I'd sort of decided I wanted to do things now which are going to be more rewarding for me.
Mm.
And helping other people was for me, the pie in the sky sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And started doing that. And
Yeah.
then I had a heart attack.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't looking after myself. I was still drinking and smoking pot. And one day, after taking a client to his drama class, we got pizzas. I bought pizzas. It was a Friday. Got pizzas. Went back to his house, and his brother was there, and we were just about to have our pizzas. And then I woke up 5 weeks later, and Anthony, it was like they turned the switch off and turned it back on again 5 weeks later. I can't remember a thing. People have asked me, when you were out of it, do you remember anything like that? There were no lights or any noises or anything
Yeah.
like that. I
And and your they were looking at turning off the life support, right?
Yeah. What happened was
Yeah.
I was actually dead, clinically dead for 29 minutes,
Mhm.
and then the paramedics arrived and they revived me. Went to Auckland Hospital. I was in a coma for 4.5 weeks, or 33 days or something, nearly 5 weeks. And then I had to learn when I came out. They basically had a meeting and talked to family and friends and said, look, we don't think Michael's going to come out of this, so we're thinking of taking the life. It's your call. What do you want to do? And they said, give us a couple of days. And I actually flatlined 4 times while in hospital, so it wasn't looking very good. And anyway, so the day after they had this discussion with my family, I woke up. So then I was once again set with all these challenges to accomplish, like learning to speak and uh, learning to walk again, and use cutlery and all this stuff. And it was very difficult, very tough, very hard. I was smashed up big time, but I got there, and after after still, even after that, still drinking and smoking, and I thought, it's been over, as I said, it's been over 500 days now. I decided one day, after spending multiple times back and forth in hospital and back home and working with special needs kids and I loved my job, but I didn't love myself. And then one day,
Mm.
after getting back home after yet another stay in hospital because of drinking and overeating and all this stuff, my body was a mess. I decided I've had enough. I can't kill myself, so I may as well start trying to look after myself a bit better,
And
you know.
live. Yeah.
And that,
Yeah.
and then on, I sort of put that first, and we talk about an AA about having an higher power, uh, and I went to AA a few times, but I chose to just tough it out myself, and although I did have help from people, I used my higher power. I looked at my daughter as being my higher power and wanting to make her happy. And so from then on, I've now got to the stage where I mentor a lot of people. I've been doing workshops, helping out others, helping out men with addiction issues. I have a Facebook group called Sober Kiwis and Friends, and that's a safe place for people to come who are working on their sobriety, staying sober. And I still work uh, 1 day a week with special needs kids as well. So
Mm.
when I look in the mirror, I like what I see. I'm pretty
Yeah.
lucky.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that, Michael. It's what a journey that you've had, and obviously the heart attack was a wake up call for you, and and it's sometimes it's these extreme events that it takes for something like that to trigger the change in our lives. Um, just in terms of breaking the cycle requires more than just stopping the habit. What inner shifts did you had to happen before the real change actually stuck?
Yeah, well, I had to change my environment. I
Mm,
couldn't go back to opening the same doors and expecting the view to be different, if you know what I mean. And
mm,
so I, I suppose I didn't cut out people, but I spent more time focusing on me, and
mm,
having a very sort of disciplined life where I love nothing more than staying at home now. I'm normally
yeah,
on my phone, looking at the internet rather than going out and about.
yeah,
I don't go to bars or restaurants or anything like that because I don't
yeah,
drink.
yeah,
I love cooking, and yeah, and so the people I hung out with, I changed, and just that was probably the biggest change. Not being in the environment that was destructive for me.
mm. And how important do you feel ownership and honesty is in your recovery?
Oh, it's a number one thing for me. I've burnt a lot of bridges.
Mm,
Um, And some of those bridges, Anthony, I'll never be able to fix again. I'll never be able to. It's been too much water under the bridge, as you say, and but that's okay. I mean, I used to get very anxious, and I still at times when I'm very anxious and think, oh gosh, is a bomb going to fall now? Is it going to go off now? But I'm not doing the things that I did in the past now, so it's
mm,
not happening. And and as I said, there's the anxiety still, which a lot of people, especially people who are addicts and have done stuff I've done, that's part and parcel for your personality. And
yeah,
and I think now because of because I'm living a life which is about serving other people, it's just the best tonic in the world, mate. It's
yeah,
just it's
yeah,
it's very yeah, it's very strong and very motivational, I suppose, as well.
yeah. And in terms of serving other people, if people have been watching this live, which was accidental live, but hey, it's been great just actually going live on all the platforms.
Haven't sworn, have I?
Uh, no, you haven't, but it doesn't matter. And on the podcast itself, like if people have been watching this video and they resonate with this, or they actually would love to connect with you or join your group, how can they do so?
Well, I've got my Facebook, which is Michael Atting, and I've also got my Facebook group, um, and they can contact me through you as well. But I'm very keen to help anywhere I can. I've got a couple of
Yeah,
people at the moment who would like me to come and do speaking engagements with them, and just sharing my journey. Basically, if I hadn't have gone through all the stuff that I've gone through, I wouldn't have a story to tell that would be worth listening to, I suppose. So
yeah,
in a way, I suppose I'm lucky that I've got a bit of a story to tell. But yeah, that's what I want to do with
yeah,
my life, and that's how I go about it. So the best place to find me is through my Facebook feeds and or through the Sober Kiwis and Friends group
yeah.
on Facebook.
Yeah. What we'll do is we'll put the information in the show notes, but also on
Okay.
the Champion Mindset Collective podcast website, there will be a page dedicated to you for this episode. So all that information will be there. Now, I've got 6 really quick fire questions, so you can answer to these questions in one word or a short sentence. And the
Okay.
first one is, how do you define success, and has that definition changed for you over time?
Success is how people perceive you.
Mhm.
Simple as that.
Yeah. Who's been your greatest inspiration and why?
Isaac Harderveld, gentleman that lived in my street in Nio, and Dutch. Grew up with his boys playing football, and Isaac sort of took me to football games, and he's passed away unfortunately now. But Nola, his wife, and Isaac were like a mother and dad to me, and yeah, love him to bits. He used to phone me up games for the Kings, and when I first started playing for them, and after games he'd watch them on TV live, and then he'd phone me up after the game and critique my performance, as they say, and I love him like a dad.
Yeah. What is something that you believe that others may disagree with?
Uh, oh, oh. I think it's the biggest thing for me is what I mentioned earlier is people can change,
Mm,
and yeah, that's it.
100%. Yeah. If you could go back and give young Michael a piece of advice, looking back, what would you give? What would you say?
I would have never picked up that first drink,
Mm,
never ever.
yeah. What is one message that you want to share with the world?
Um, there's people that can't. Alcohol, I think, is the worst drug in the world, and I watched something recently about a Wallaby, an Australian rugby player who said they used to go pre-season. They used to go in when they came to camp as a new Australian team. They'd have a bonding session, and the All Blacks did it. The All Whites did it. We all do it in sport, and it always involved drinking. The drinking fraternity. And my birth name was Michael John Tuta. My mum was from the Chatham Islands, and so I'm adopted. For us island boys and that, and although I don't look like it and I don't speak Maori fluently, but alcohol is actually a drug, and we're allergic to it. And to encourage us to drink is really detrimental for our health and for our life, and it's caused so much problems for so many, especially island people or ethnic communities as well. Uh, yeah, but it's socially acceptable, unfortunately. So that's a big thing. Yeah,
Mm, mm.
negative.
The last question I've got for you is, what does it mean to you to be a champion and have a champion mindset?
Yeah, just being accountable. I think that's really important. Being in the past, I think when you're self-focused, you don't care about other people because you're at fault for so much. You sort of put it behind you. But being accepting of what other people believe in you is a big thing for me these days, and I want to make sure that I set the right example with others.
Mm, yeah. Michael, thank you so much for your honesty and your courage and your willingness to share parts of your journey that aren't always easy to talk about. Your story is a powerful reminder that stopping uh, the instant insanity that starts with awareness. Once you have that awareness and taking that courage, and then the decision to break that cycle. For our listeners, if you've been watching this and something in this conversation has resonated with you, and you want to change is possible. First, you've got to like you come to the awareness and go on that journey of courage, and making a decision to make that change. You're not broken. You're not alone. Michael's here. There's plenty of other people around that can help you. Until next time, keep showing up and keep choosing growth and keep building your champion mindset. And lastly, I just want to say you are loved, you are worthy. Champion your life, champion your greatness, and have an amazing day.
Ka kite, and thank you very, very much. Cheers, mate.
See everyone. Have a great Saturday.